Welcome back. So today we're going to do Junkyard Computer Part 2. Alright, now the other day, as I was telling you guys, the memory modules in this old computer were 4 gigabyte memory strips, and I just happened to have some 8 gigabyte memory strips laying around. So what we're going to do is we're going to swap these guys out. And so here we go. Now I've already done 2 rows because before I did this I wanted to make sure that this memory was actually compatible, and according to the documentation it was, but I wanted to go ahead and put a couple strips in there and just make sure that they weren't going to cause us any issues. But now we're going to replace the other 2 4 gigabyte modules with 8 gigabyte modules. And whenever you're doing a memory upgrade, what you're going to do, okay, I don't know if hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing here. There are some little connectors on either end of the slot, and you just have to get hold of those and push them down. Now, some memory configurations, it depends on your motherboard. In some cases, you may only have, like at one end, it may be fixed, and at the other end, you actually can push down on these tabs. Okay, so that's what I've done. I've pushed down on the tabs on both ends. All right, and now out comes the memory module. And here it is. This is a 4 gigabyte memory module. There's nothing wrong with this, by the way. This memory is perfectly fine. So I may use it in a different box. I don't know. See, the thing is, I don't have that many computers around anymore that use DDR3 memory, which is what this is. Okay, so now what you're going to do is take a look at the memory slot, and hopefully you guys can see this thing. Okay, if you see this memory slot down here, you're going to notice that it's got a notch in it. What you want to do is you want to align, or I guess I should say it's not really a notch, it's more like a plastic, like a demarcation down there. Anyway, what you want to do is you want to line that up with the notch in your memory here, okay? And so you can kind of just see if you look down through there, and if you don't have enough light, get a flashlight so you can see what you're doing. Line that up, and if you start pushing the memory in and you meet significant resistance, then just double check and make sure that you really do have it lined up correctly. Now, there is going to be a little resistance. I'm going to push this in with firm, even pressure. Okay, did you hear those snaps? All right, that was the holders on each end snapping into position. Okay, so that's good. All right, now my next memory module. Golly. Okay, those things are a little stiff. All right, so out comes the last 4 gigabyte module, and in goes the next 8 gigabyte module. And again, lining up the plastic with the notch. And now I'm just going to push this guy straight in. Okay, couple of other things to note. I've done some... The computer was cutting off mysteriously. It would just, it'd be running fine, and all of a sudden it would just cut off. I was like, what the heck's going on? Well, I got in here, this is an old enough CPU that it doesn't have its own built-in temperature monitor, but I reached in the case after I had the computer turned off, and the heat sink over that processor was hotter than hell's hinges. I mean, it was real, and so I took the heat sink off, and the thermal paste underneath the heat sink was just cooked. And so it's a wonder we didn't tear up our CPU. Anyway, what I did was I took some alcohol and I cleaned off the CPU real good, and I got another heat sink. I happen to have another heat sink in the closet, and this one, there it goes. This one is a larger, this is a big chunk of aluminum. So it's a much larger heat sink. Now, I've got a processor ordered. This is an FX 6300 processor, so whenever we get back from Christmas break, we're going to upgrade the processor in this machine. And something else we're going to do. We're going to replace, see where I've put a couple of extra exhaust fans in this box, but the only exhaust fans I could find were ones that I'd pulled out of an old Dell computer. Actually, we had a big old stack of Dell computers, and so I pulled some fans, some good exhaust fans. These things blow a lot of air through the chassis, but unfortunately this motherboard didn't have, it only had one chassis fan connector, and it wasn't conveniently placed. So I had to do a little bit of rigging here to get this thing to work. And so I'm gonna, one of my projects for after we get back, whenever I open up the chassis again to replace the CPU, which I will demonstrate to you guys also, at that time I'm gonna go ahead and fix these wires so that they're you know, a little bit neater and not so stretched. And also I'm going to replace this electrical tape with actual butt connectors, so it'll be a little bit cleaner and more secure installation. Okay, now then, let us start this puppy and see what happens. You hear those fans? This fan in the front is a Foxconn, and that thing blows a lot of volume. The one in the back is just like a generic fan, and it works fine, but it's not as noisy as the Foxconn. It probably also doesn't blow the volume of air that the Foxconn does. Now, if you're installing with a newer motherboard, then your motherboard's going to have actual chassis fan connectors, and the motherboard can actually control the speed of the fans depending on how much heat is being sensed inside the system. Like, you know, the GPU's got its own heat sensor. Modern CPUs have their own heat sensor. A lot of systems now have a heat sensor for the memory. So the firmware kind of monitors the condition as you're going along, and it adjusts the fan speed as necessary. But my old Gigabyte motherboard here doesn't have any of that fancy stuff. All right, good deal. Okay, so we are booted up once again. All right, so we've got our system rebooted, and now we're going to take a look and just make sure. Go to System, About. All right, check it out. Ah, dang it. Okay, now we've got 32 gigabytes of memory. Yay. All right, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do a performance check on my memory and just see, you know, if I've picked up any additional speed, which I should have, because the memory that I pulled was PC3 10600, and the memory that I put in was PC3, I can't remember, but it's like 12800 or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I can find out though. I have a program on here called HW Info. This is freeware, or I guess shareware, whatever. If you're going to use it commercially, I think you're supposed to pay for it, but we don't really have any reason to use the advanced features or anything like that. So a lot of the softwares that we just use the freeware version, if there is one. Okay, let's see. Timings. Okay, these timings are just a little bit better than what I had before. Yeah, this is PC3 12800. That's what this is. Okay, so I'm going to test this machine. Oh yeah, something else I wanted to do. Yeah, see, I'm not getting as much speed out of this network interface port as I'm supposed to. I'm not sure why this thing keeps kicking down to 100 megabit. It should be gigabit because we're plugged into a gigabit port. And so I've got to investigate and see what the problem is there. And you know, here at the school we've got a synchronous connection, so our upload and download are pretty much the same thing. You know, a lot of places have asynchronous, so they have like a hella download, but then their upload is only like 10 or 12 megabit. So I can push as fast as I can pull on this particular network. So yeah, let me do some investigating and see what's the problem with my network connection, and then I'll get back to you guys.